Indian Education Specialist with the Office of Public Instruction. And yeah, Jennifer, she's been working with Indian Ed for All for quite a while, previous to OPI too. There's a lot of great experience, and she's the one that's really the force behind all of our webinars and conferences, and so does a lot of to get that organized and brings in all the cool speakers. So yeah, Jennifer's a awesome resource here for us with Indian Ed for All, and it's been an honor and privilege to work with her and to continue work with her. So I look forward to hearing what you have to share today, Jennifer. So take it away. Hoka hey.
Oh, thank you, my friend. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, shalom aleichem. Thank you so much for, if you've been with us all day, what an exciting day it's been over in the language and culture room. And I believe that I've learned things that I will even be sharing in this presentation. There's my little menu bar. So we're going to talk about what the 5 R's are and how they relate to science. We're going to take a little overview of related resources. And you know, the bottom line is we're all striving for relationships and a sense of connection. And so let's do this through science, both Western science as well as Indigenous knowledges. So first, let me welcome you, K-12 teachers, administrators, whether you're from Montana. We have some folks here that are not from Montana. We have folks here that work at universities and work with teachers. So welcome to all of you. You don't have to be a teacher of science to be here. I'll be doing a land acknowledgement, talking a little bit about who I am and as well as my relationships as part of my introduction. So in the land acknowledgement, I feel that land acknowledgements are very important because it just reminds us of the relationship that we have with the land and the relationship, even more importantly, with the people who have occupied and utilized and learned from and developed language and buried their relatives on the lands. You know, it's really important to go back to the beginning, I feel, because the land holds all of those memories. So in the spirit of healing, I acknowledge and honor the original peoples of the southwestern Helena, Montana area where I am, the Salish, the Blackfeet, the Kootenai, and other tribal nations, Crow, Northern Cheyenne, Chippewa Cree, Nez Perce, Nakota, Dakota, Little Shell, Assiniboine, Shoshone, and the many Indigenous people who call it home, past, present, and future. So I am Jennifer Stadum, also Asowawani, and also Tavona Israel Batdavora. So I come from Scottish, English, French, and Sephardi, which is a type of Jewish people's ethnicity. And my pronouns are she, her. Asowawani means flies above, and that is my Amskapi Bagani gifted name from ceremony, which is one of the most enormous privileges I have ever encountered in my life. And then my Hebrew name. And I come from the traditional lands of the Muwekma Ohlone, the Cocheno, Karkeen, Coast Miwok, and Alaquilai in California. I recently learned that the place I was born in originally was known as in Ohlone as Huichin. And, you know, I went to 4th grade in California. So we had the Mission Indians year when I was in 4th grade, and that is pretty much the sum total that I learned about Indians. So to be here today and learning what I'm learning and being able to provide facilitation for events that have so many Native voices and so much Native knowledge, it is just an absolute privilege to have grown this far. So when it comes to place, I love this quote by Keith Basso, which is in the book Wisdom Sits in Places. The sense of place rests its case on the unexamined premise that being from somewhere is better than being from nowhere. All of us, it asserts, are generally better off with a place to call our own. Places, it reminds us, are really very good. So hopefully you know where you're from and your places. So my relationships, all of these people that you're about to see, some of you've already seen in the other room, but these folks really have believed in my journey as I've learned more and more about Indigenous knowledges and exactly how that fits in with science instruction. And so Michelle Mitchell, who is the Tribal Education Director of Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribes, and Tim Ryan, Tony Inkashola, Julie Kajun, Michael Munson, who sent us some love this morning, Jermaine White, Vernon Finley, who may or may not be still presenting in the other room, Frank Finley, and then, of course, Donnie Wetzel, who is at OPI, and my dear friend, Mike Jetty, Shane Doyle, Mandy Smoker Broadus, Amy Williams, the great Rob Wall-Kimmerer has been a mentor, Carolyn Pardini, and Henrietta Mann. I could not be presenting to you today without these people and the wisdom and the knowledge and the love that they have given me. So I'm deeply grateful for them. So the 5 R's are relationships, why I start there: responsibility, respect, relevance, and reciprocity. So relationships, I like to think about relationships happen with everything. And so my suggestion is, when you think about relationships, is establishing positive relationship first with yourself, with other teachers, with the land, especially when it comes to science instruction, with tribal members, and with the living things found on the landscape, and of course, with your students. Responsibility looks like responsibility towards self. Are your actions in alignment with your best self? This may seem like a question that maybe does or does not fit into your science instruction, but I really truly believe that if we show up with a pure heart and we are teaching to the best of our abilities, and we are in alignment with who we're really supposed to be, we're going to be doing the best thing by children, and I think that's a really important. Responsibility towards others. Are you providing a safe place for people to express themselves and to learn? Responsibility as a community member. Are you as involved as you can be to co-create a community that serves all of its members? And then, of course, responsibility towards the land and the foods and medicines that come from the land. Are you respectful when you're on the land and with its resources, especially when you're using those resources as teaching tools? Of course, respect is super important, and where it fits in with Indigenous knowledges and incorporating Indigenous science with Western science is teaching that science and traditional ecological knowledges cohesively. I do think it's really important to not just add on, or if you're only teaching science on a Friday, to then throw in a statement about what natives did on the landscape. I'm really going to invite you to look at tribally specific resources and really think about, if the content is a respectful way to incorporate these knowledges with what you're already teaching. And of course, always with the living things on the landscape. And relevance is so important. I really feel like relevance is the glue between, the content and the heart. Remember, I've been teaching for a long time, and we used to say, we're teaching students, not subjects. And now we call those subjects, content. And, hopefully we're teaching from our heart, and we're teaching, that the things that we are teaching do matter to students, particularly when it comes to science, and we'll get into some of the differences between Western science and Indigenous knowledge systems a little bit here in just a second. But I think it's so important to show students why that's relevant. Well, multiple perspectives is really the bottom line of what we're talking about. So, establishing that relevance between your content and the ideas that you're presenting with tech. Tech, again, is traditional ecological knowledge and science. And then, of course, between the information that you're sharing and how it can impact your students, tribes, lands, environments, etc. So that kind of leads us to, next one's responsibility. But what I'll talk about before responsibility is reciprocity. And I had a huge lesson about this recently. The point being that reciprocity is not transactional. And I think that's a really important thing to just take a moment to let sink in. Reciprocity is not transactional. It's not, this service is $20 and I paid you $20. When it comes to knowledges, it's sharing knowledge is an exchange of energy, and reciprocity is an exchange of energy that is equal to or greater than the energy being received. So you can have more gratitude than what information, the energy that it took for you to receive the information. And that's the best case scenario, because gratitude plays, I think, a lot into the practice of reciprocity on a mindful level. And so reciprocity is mindful, it's respectful, it reflects relationship and connection, and is always practiced with the most heartfelt of gratitude. I really love what Robin Wall Kimmerer, she talks a lot about this when she talks about the honorable harvest. And so if you're not familiar with Robin Wall Kimmerer, she wrote Braiding Sweetgrass and Gathering Moss, and has some amazing videos out there with her teachings. And she's just what a beautiful soul to help guide our work. But again, you know, getting deeper into what reciprocity might look like. Reciprocate when anything of value is shared with you, even wisdom, medicine. I'm drinking a tea right now that contains, sorry, there it is, that contains bitterroot that was harvested by my friend Tim Ryan. And I am so grateful. I let the root know that I was grateful for it when I took it out and before I drank it. You know, it's just, I'm hoping I can get up to the bitterroot harvest in the next week or so here, and learn even more about, you know, what this plant appreciates as far as reciprocity. But, you know, more than medicine, knowledge, a story, time, space, whatever is being shared with you, especially, you know, if you are from a different tribe or even from a different, you know, you're not native, and someone is sharing this sacred knowledge with you about the land or about a medicine or a story, you know, those are such precious gifts, because they connect back to millennia of ancestors and language and people and the land. And so those are always such great gifts. If you're asking an elder or a cultural expert anything, be prepared to reciprocate with some sort of a gift, whether it's sweetgrass or a stipend or tobacco. And it's okay to ask them, you know, what would be a form of reciprocity that, you know, I'm learning. Let them know that you're humble. Let them know that you're learning. If harvesting from the land for food, medicine, or teaching aids, reciprocate with a prayer, or if you don't do that, a statement of gratitude, or tobacco or sweetgrass. Be a model of genuine reciprocity and gratitude to your students, and even require your students to practice mindful reciprocity with each other and, you know, with the resources in your classroom, just to really build that value. So, oh, where'd responsibility go? Okay, well, we don't have that responsibility slide. And again, with one screen, I'm just going to keep going here. So, Western science and traditional knowledges. I really love, again, Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's just been such an incredible teacher for me, but she talks about how, you know, Western science can help inform even more of what traditional knowledges are, and traditional knowledges can conversely inform Western science. So this isn't an either or. And, you know, one is not better than the other. They're both incredibly important. And there's just so much knowledge, you know, in each faction, but there are some differences. When you think about the origins of traditional knowledges, they began on a landscape with the oral tradition. There were many, you know, indigenous languages that didn't have a writing system. And so all of that knowledge was handed down. And when I think about the importance of oral tradition, I'm thinking about, you know, a few days ago, yesterday, when it was like, you know, dumping softball-sized snow, wet cement snowflakes everywhere. I really was grateful that I had the appropriate clothing. I ended up going for a little walk. I had the appropriate footwear. I had the appropriate head covering and gloves. Well, you know, that's because I could go to the store and buy all those things. But when I think about living on this Montana landscape through a winter, 12,000 years ago, you bet your bottom dollar, I'm going to want to know what makes things waterproof. And so what makes things waterproof? Well, if you have a hide, the animal's brain contains enough of a certain kind of enzyme that makes the cells in their hide. So one brain per animal hide outside of large bison bulls. Large bison bull hides require sometimes more than one brain to actually get them tanned adequately. But for other ungulates, other hooved animals on the landscape, elk and deer, etc., one brain contains enough of this enzyme to help make the cells in the hide after you remove the hair and all of the fascia, to make those cells hydrophobic. It's hydrophobic, so that they do not, they reject water. They do not allow the water in. Hydrophilic is where you have like a sponge effect and all of the water comes in. So the one brain makes that whole entire hide more waterproof. And then of course the acids that come up in smoke from a fire also create a hydrophobic situation in those cells in the hide. So yeah, I'm going to want to know that. And somehow thousands and thousands and thousands of people in Montana 12,000 years more ago knew all of this and were able to not just hang out on this landscape in the winter, but thrive in this landscape and use their seasonal round to maximize their resources. That is a tremendous amount of knowledge that can be broken down in bite-sized pieces to what we call Western science. But in the fact that, this was all developed through experimentation and learning, and passed along with oral tradition is so important. And then other aspects of traditional knowledge is a holistic approach, learn from observation experience. In the environment, the environment is part of social and spiritual relationships. It's not, we are a part of nature, not apart from nature. It's based on cumulative collective experience, mainly qualitative. Data is generated by the resource users. That's really valuable. And integrated and applied to traditional subsistence practices, as I mentioned. And then, of course, Western science, most of us, especially those of us who have practiced science teaching, Western tradition, reductionist, taught and learned mostly analytically. It's hierarchical, like Linnaeus, right? And compartmentalized, based upon laws and theories, mainly quantitative, data collected by specialists or experts, and then hypothesis testing. But when you put these two together, especially to solve a major problem, such as getting a river cleaned up, or keeping a certain ecosystem in a healthy balance, they can be very, very powerful together. So how do the 5 R's relate to science? Well, information, whether from a science concept or Indigenous knowledge transfer, it's all about relationships. Think about it. Every single disciplinary core idea has to have relationships in order to be that discipline of science. So reactions only happen after actions between 2 or more things that are in relation to each other. Chemicals, substances, elements, energies. Systems are how the parts within a system are related, such as an ecosystem or a solar system or a metabolic system. It's all about the relationship of where they are to each other, especially when you think of solar systems and galaxies and orbits and all of the relationships that they have to have in order to have the very specific orbits that they do. Reproduction of all living things is a series of relationships, from physical to chemical, and between at least 2 biological entities. So how do the 5 R's relate to science? Well, information, whether from a Western science concept or from, again, an Indigenous knowledge transfer, should be respected, and its relevance should be inherent rather than superimposed. So cultural context is highly relevant within the context of Indigenous science knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge. Cultural knowledge deserves deep respect. Again, when you think about the integrity of cultural knowledge, where you can tan a hide in a very similar way that's been done for thousands of years because it works, that deserves some really deep respect. And hang in there, technical blip where my screen goes black temporarily. Okay, anyhow, scientific context is imperative to the validity and the relevance of data, and the respectful collection of scientific data is imperative. It came up earlier this morning in the language and culture room about appropriation, and that's really what we're talking about here. There have been so many instances where Western scientists, ecologists, biologists have gone into Indigenous communities and not respected the knowledge. So these theses, these papers, these are published. These research projects are published with absolutely no attribution for the Indigenous communities' contributions to that science. When those contributions really were the foundation of why some of these projects were so successful. So that's really what we're talking about here, is making sure that, if you learn something, I've really tried to practice since I was taught this way coming to Montana. Tim Ryan was one of the first people that taught me about how rocks, no, they're not living things as far as a heartbeat in them, but they are considered living energies, because when you scientifically break it down, you really have all of those molecules. We have an illusion of being solid, but as we know from science, nothing is really solid because all of those atoms and particles are moving about. I attribute Tim Ryan for teaching me that. That is not knowledge that I got from a book. I can't cite that, but if any time I talk about it, I try to give him that attribution, and I think that's a really important part of this. So information, again, whether it's acquired through science, it requires reciprocity and responsibility. So when you're citing scientific data, it is responsible to cite it accurately and appropriately. And when sharing Indigenous knowledge or tech, it is responsible to attribute credit to the people who are keepers of the knowledge. So what are some connections? Well, we're going to go K2 all the way through high school. So hopefully these links will work and it will just be amazing. But what I have first is the content standard. Some of the content standards are related directly to Indian education, and some of the standards don't have Indian education in them, but I can't unsee where the Indian education is. So if you ever want to have deeper conversations about this, give me a call, and I am happy to go through your standards, that your set of standards that you're working with for your grade band or grade level, and I am happy to help illuminate ways where there really are organic connections between the Montana Science Content Standards and Indian Ed for All. And so one of my very favorite examples of use and share observations of local weather conditions to describe patterns over time, seasonal rounds. When you look at tribally specific seasonal rounds, they are all different based upon geographic location and culture, as far as what cultures value, for their survival and thrivance. So in the Salish seasonal round, which is my personal favorite, just because I was having a conversation with Tim Ryan many years ago, and I said, do you have an example of a Salish seasonal round? And he actually went and created one, and that is the one that we still use, and it is in these lessons, which is phenology, seasons make the world go round, which is earth and space science. So these are really they're 4, 3, 5, but they can be adapted to K2 as well. And okay, let's see, and now I'm going to do my new share, and okay, so hopefully you can see the phenology page. So there's some background knowledge, there's the standard, there are the key concepts of the essential understandings for application. There's more background knowledge information to build knowledge as a teacher, the procedure, and resources. This one happens to be looking at average temperatures, looking at average high temperatures. So we provide the data for you. You don't have to go and find this. So those are some really fun lessons, and they are available. I did put this presentation. Oops, let me go to screen sharing. And it's not letting me switch screens. So we'll just start again with the screen share. Okay. There we go. All right. So these lessons are all, this PowerPoint is available in the resources. So hopefully Mike and others in the Indian Ed for All room have been posting the links to the resources. That link is also in your reminder letter that you receive with the links for the conference. So 3.5, just a different one for you to look at. Obtain and combine information from various sources about ways individual communities use science ideas to protect the Earth's resources, environment, and systems, and describe examples of how American Indians use scientific knowledge and practices to maintain relationships with the natural world. So of course, this is one of our Montana science content standards that links directly to American Indians. And so that's kind of cool. If you have not seen the Glacier Park Workhouse curriculum, it is such a treat. Okay, now we're back on that. Button is working again. This is an amazing curriculum that I was so fortunate to help work on years and years ago. Also helped with the standards, which are about needing to be updated probably. But there are links there. So there's all of the lesson information and background information. But in this left-hand column here throughout the curriculum, there are links to these amazing videos. And so one of our homelands, this is a Kootenai video that features our last presenter over in the Language and Culture room, Vernon Finley, talking about really wonderful video of him talking about this. There's Blackfeet videos, there's Salish and Pend Oreille videos. This workhouse curriculum really, truly is pretty phenomenal and a really great example of using videos that have Native presenters in them to present an authentic and tribally specific perspective, which I think is really, really important. 6.8, we're looking at develop a model to describe the cycling of matter and flow of energy among living and non-living parts of an ecosystem. The Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes have created just a phenomenal curriculum called Fire on the Land, and there are so many and they've made it digital, so this is a link, anybody can go to this. It's so exciting that it's all digital. There are videos, there's stories. You see Beaver Steele's Fire here, and Chady Bell was our Salish presenter earlier, and he said, nope, it's the time for coyote stories. This season is over. The snow really isn't on the ground anymore. We're past spring, the beginning of spring. So Beaver Steele's Fire is a book that we sent out to schools years ago. It should be in all of your elementary libraries. And but now would not be a time to share that story. You can share a little bit about the story, but it wouldn't be appropriate culturally and respectfully culturally to tell the Beaver Steele's Fire. But that story is here. Interviews, there's galleries of photographs that you can use as instructional materials, information about fire ecology, and then today what they're looking at for modern fire management. And so Fire on the Land, if you're not familiar with Montana tribes, if you're not familiar with Montana, the Salish were very, very proactive of utilizing fire intentionally, as were the Blackfeet, using fire intentionally on the landscape to manage the landscape. So you're all familiar, I'm sure, with controlled burns. Well, these were masters of controlled burns before we were even talking about controlled burns in the modern era. So this is a really, really phenomenal curriculum with a lot of fabulous information. Yay, my buttons keep working. This is so exciting. Okay, so high school. Now we go all the way up. Design and evaluate and refine a solution for reducing the direct and indirect impacts of human activities on the environment and biodiversity, and analyze scientific concepts used by American Indians to maintain healthy relationships with environmental resources. Lots of hot topics here. There is so much out there. This is 9-12, but K-12 people pay attention, because there are so many wonderful, wonderful resources here that can be adapted. But just particularly, this is a science standard. includes American Indians. It was very specifically written for Montana. So this is our former Teacher of the Year. Sweet, my buttons keep working. This is so exciting. Bill Stockton, and he is also a Teresa Veldkamp Advocacy Award for Excellence in Indian Education for All recipient. And he developed this whole website, which has examples of integrated lessons. And these are just phenomenal. These are primarily high school based, but they have multiple perspectives. They have multiple data sets already compiled, and talk about relevance. The way he puts these together really connects the content and the relevance with the students. And I've heard nothing but amazing feedback from teachers who have actually implemented this particular unit. Another site that I would like to share is SKC Living Landscapes. Now, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to get on the right page here. I'm going to show you something. If you are not familiar with SKC Living Landscapes, see this get started with these 3 short video tutorials. Take a moment to do that. It will open up the whole site for you. There is so much here. There are cultural values, there are there's videos there. It is really amazing. So if I go, there we go. We've got an introductory episode of the series, which is storytelling, and it sets the tone for all of the characters that end up telling the stories. Then you can select a region. So I know some of you are from the Northeast, so I'm going to select the Northeast. I normally don't do that, so I am unfamiliar with what we're going to find. But it gives you information. I know somebody earlier was asking about, specific Northeast information. So this gives you more information on what is happening for the tribes in the Northeast. So we have these tribal fact sheets, and like I said, go do the tutorials. There are labs and teacher pages. There's a whole resources home. Really, the tools and resources on SKC Living Landscapes are just phenomenal. I really did have to sit with it for a few hours to get all of the workings of it. So it is a little bit of a commitment, but if it's right down your alley, I promise you will find such amazing resources on that. And of course, the Smithsonian's NK360 is also a tremendous site. And one of these, this is from the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indian. They have social studies resources, science resources. There's so many different resources here, but this one really pertains to high school, and it pertains to science and what do the foods we eat matter. And then it also gets into the fish wars, which is actually really interesting. They've got just so many resources on this site. Here's the fish wars. What kinds of actions can lead to justice? The really fascinating lesson to go through. I enjoyed going through it as a student, and so I encourage you to check out Native Knowledge 360 if you have never done so. All right. So what you're looking for as you're going through lessons, as you're going through planning is, and this is just a tribally specific example of a 5 R's checklist. Relationships. Are you looking at, the actual people that are on your landscape that you're teaching about? Relevant and respectful. Is it relevant to the tribes and respectfully using their tribal data and knowledge? Has there been reciprocity? You could invite tribal members. Again, this is tribally specific for CSKT, and such as Whisper Means, who is just an awesome biologist with CSKT and their Natural Resources Department, and she's also an incredible educator. Or a member of the Kootenai or the Salish Culture Committees. Does the tribe near you have a culture committee? Can you call them and ask the best ways to go about, sharing information? Would somebody come in and speak with your students? Oops, sorry. And then responsibility. Are you responsible using the information and practices that have been used and collected by the tribes? Other tribally based and background knowledge building resources. We have an entire Indian Education for All website in case you haven't seen that today. I do also want to talk for a moment. I know that Mike and Stephen and Zach were covering the previously recorded offerings, but I want to focus on our ethnobotany webinar series. So there, as you can see, they're all recorded. There is a link to a survey here. If you complete that survey, you can get 2 professional development units, formerly known as renewal units, by watching each of these. All of these folks are Montana tribal ethnobotany people. They're phenomenal. If you haven't seen these, I strongly encourage you to take the time. And honestly, unless they're talking about a specific plant, these are, if you can only watch part of it and just have it on in the background, like, you know, a podcast, the information is still just as valuable. I know you're all busy and your resources are stretched, but if you have the time to listen to these, I've listened to them all again on my personal time, just because the information is phenomenal in all of them. Oops, you're not seeing those. I'm sorry. Here we go. Here's our YouTube site. Here's the link down here and the information about the renewal units. And here, Rosalind LaPierre's Blackfeet, Rose Bear Don't Walk is Salish, Mersa Spang is Northern Cheyenne, Annie Sorrell and Loja Fixico are both from Flathead, and with Salish ties, Reina Montoya is Nakota, and Mariah Gladstone is Blackfeet. So we have a lot of different knowledges here. Back to the right page. All right, so that's our and so we're constantly striving to create, especially virtual, because you know so many of you are so far away from Helena, and there is only one of me that you know really focuses on science. So if there is something you would like for us to cover, please reach out and let us know if you have a great idea, because we're always willing to listen to them. But if you're not familiar, and again, this PowerPoint is in the resources, so all of these resources and links are readily available. But there are, if you're looking at the environment, there's some really wonderful American Indian responses to environmental challenges. One of my favorite things in the entire world is the Animal Field Guide to the Flathead Reservation. It is an app. I think you can see my phone. It is a standalone app, so make sure you are connected to the Wi-Fi when you download it. It's a rather large one. However, if you've never experienced this app before, you're in for a treat. Not only does it provide scientific information about the species that are listed in the Animal Field Guide, but it also, this is what I could do. I can share this with you. Except of course the app's been updated, so now it has to, anyhow, there are birds, there's mammals, there's fish. If you go to the birds and say select songbird, if you select then say chickadee, because there's one right outside my window, you can not only hear the chickadee song. Oh, that was fast. Let's see if I can do it here. So I'm going to turn my background off here so you can see this. Yay, technology. Okay. All right. So you can see I've got identify, report, restoration area, nature activities. I'm going to select identification. Then you get an identification guide. I'm going to select birds. You get different kinds of birds. You get loons, sandpipers, rails, gulls, ducks, and geese. And I'm going to scroll down here and I am going to select songbirds. And again, a whole menu of songbirds here. I'm going to select chickadee. And now I'm going to select there we go. So you've got the sound of the chickadee, but even better, if you go to the bottom of the app, next to the camera, there's some horizontal lines. And I want to know, how do the Salish say chickadee?
That's partner.
Oh, how do the Kootenai say chickadee?
Metskapas.
Mitskakas. So there's all kinds of information, cultural as well as the biological information about the animals. There are amphibians, reptiles, fish, birds, and mammals. You can learn about the riparian areas. I think you can see that, riparian areas. You can learn about climate change. So it's a really phenomenal app. I have used this as a reciprocal teaching tool. So I've had 4th and 5th graders study about an animal, how the Salish say it, how the Kootenai say it, and then they brought their knowledge, those 4th and 5th graders in, and they taught the kindergartners and 1st graders and 2nd graders about it. So that was super cool. It's a really awesome way to utilize that application, which is so exciting. And so again, in the, make sure I'm on the right page. How we get there? Yes. Okay. So I just remember that moment being on the Flathead River with Tim Ryan and saying, wait, rocks are alive? I mean, I had just graduated with my master's of science in science education and published a journal article in the Intermountain Journal of Science that had a lot of statistics in it. And I was really struggling with my Western science bias about rocks being alive. It's just a different perspective. And so I would just really invite you to be willing to consider opening and shifting your perspective, even if a little, to think about how does that look, to think about this in a new way. I find that really fun. I love unpacking my biases and opening my mind. It's one of my favorite things to do, which is why I'm in this work. But I really do invite you to be open to other perspectives and ways that make sense of the world, because I believe that when we put our perspectives together, we can come up with much better solutions. And if we can instill that in our students and that sense of, hey, the more ideas, the better. Let's find out if we can work together using all of these different ideas to find the very best solutions. Land-based, you know, we're on this incredible land here in Montana. And so, you know, find out where are you from? Find out where you're from and develop your relationship to the place. If you're not sure about the land you're on, if you just moved here, or if you're moving somewhere else, develop a relationship with the land. There's nothing that excites me more than walking around my garden, even in wintertime. Okay, maybe not so much in wintertime when it's like covered in snow, but definitely right now, every day I'm noticing something new in my garden. And my daffodils actually have buds on them. I'm very excited, but I feel like I'm in relationship when I get to see the changes and I hear what birds, oh, I heard a new bird song today. Oh, well, it's April 14th. I keep track of all of that because I'm a bird nerd, but I do keep track of all that. And then I go, oh gosh, you know what? A gray catbird showed up on May 1st last year too. Interesting. So develop a relationship with the people of the land too. Don't be shy. Go to a powwow, go to, you know, any sort of event that you hear about, ask for permission if you're not sure. Often you'll be granted permission to have that experience. And they did talk a lot about that over in Culture and Language today, about the importance of, you know, come to our reservation, come to our people, come talk to us, get to know native language speakers, because you know, that's really a beautiful window into culture. And then relevance. Make sure it matters to you. Make sure it matters and that you believe in the connections, because it will make it more relevant to your students. Cultivate those relationships, cultivate a curiosity for the land that you're on, and cultivate a wondering to see all the ways the various people and parts of the world are connected for your students. So really, it comes down to relationships. Everything, like I said, back down to the disciplinary core ideas, it's all about relationships. We're all starving for relationships and a sense of connection. And let's do this through science. Relationships are key. Respectful relationships are essential. Relevance leads to respect and deeper relationships. Reciprocity brings relevance to a relationship. And responsibility is the result of a respectful relationship. So I thank you so much, Lemlunch, Toda Rabah. Here's my contact information. If you're still scratching your head going, but I'm not really sure where this fits in with science, call me, set up an appointment with me. Let's walk through some of your curriculum together as partners. I'm here to support your work. And I really, really want to say thank you so, so much for participating in our summit today. It's just been delightful to know that all of you are this interested in Indian education for all and furthering your skills and abilities. And Mike and Stephen and Zach and I are all here to support your work. But most of all, thank you so much for being a public school teacher right now. I know it isn't easy what's being asked of you. And I hope that you're finding ways to take care of yourself and to find joy, because the more joy you find, the more joy your students will feel. And again, because I was kind of clicking between screens, I haven't seen the chat. So Mike, if you could help me know if there's been any questions, or if you have any questions, now's the time to shout them out in our final few minutes.
I've kind of been answering questions in the chat as they come up, Jennifer, just regarding where some of the resources are, but.
Okay.
Just getting a thank you. Thank you. Learned a lot.
Oh, yes, please remember to do the feedback survey. And please join us at the Cultural Exchange Networking and Information meeting on Tuesday. I'm really excited about what we're hoping to do with those grants. So let's see. And so the survey link is also on your reminder letter. So if you got here today with that, that link is there. Cool. And well, gosh golly, I know Mike is itching to get to Kio. If you're in the Missoula area, please know that there is a really phenomenal, I'm